Good afternoon and happy Sabbath, Covenant Advent Church. And good afternoon and happy Sabbath to those of you who've joined us online. Welcome back for our evening study. Thank you for joining, and I pray you'll be blessed as we spend the remaining hours of the Sabbath together. We will start with hymn number 552. Please take your hymnals in hand and turn to hymn number 552. Hymn 552. The Lord's my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me down to lie in pastures green. He leadeth me the quiet waters by. My soul he doth restore. Amen. I'll now turn it over to Pastor Lloyd Grubb, who will continue with part 2 of the Pot of Manna.
The projector. All right. So here we are with part 2 of the Pot of Manna. So welcome again, everyone, as we do our evening study, and we'll just kneel to pray. Father, who art in heaven, I thank you again for the blessings of this day. I thank you for your continued grace upon us, and again we pray your blessing and your healing upon Brother Ernesto's family members who are sick, and pray also for Brother Ernesto that you continue to bless him. May you be with us, dear Father, as we study together. May you open our minds and our understanding in the reading of your word and by thy Spirit, for Christ's sake. Amen. So we'll continue with our talk and looking into some scriptures when it comes on to the Pot of Manna. We'll review 2 texts that we started with in the morning or in the midday service. And the first one is in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 3. Hebrews 9, verse 3. Notice it says here, and after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is called the holiest of all, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had manna, which is our focus today, earlier now, and Aaron's rod that budded, and the table of the covenant, and over it the cherubims of glory, shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particular, which we will not speak in particular. In John chapter 6, verse 47, It says, Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that believe on me hath everlasting life. I am the bread of life. Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If any man eat this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world, which signify the death of Christ. But to consume Christ is to live totally in his presence and in his teachings. Notice in verse 52 it says, The Jews therefore strove among themselves, saying, How can this man give us his flesh to eat? Then Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, except ye eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoso eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood hath eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me, and I in him. They become partakers of the same Spirit. Notice here, as the living Father hath sent me, and I live by the Father, so he that eateth me, even he shall live by me. In other words, Christ lived by every word that come out of his Father's mouth, and they are one, and we ought to be one with Jesus. This is the bread which come down from heaven, not as your father did eat manna, and are dead. He that eateth of this bread shall live forever. And so we're looking at the manna, and we're looking at the lessons that we can gain from the manna. So the second chapter to look at is Numbers chapter 11. This was more in line with what Sister Martha was reading earlier in the midday service. This idea of lusting after the flesh pot, but yet even though they lust after the flesh pot, God gave them something better. But you can see now when Christ says they ate the flesh, if they ate the manna and they are dead, because they really weren't partaking. And today we're faced with the same dilemma. The society and the sinful world, so to speak, and the sinful nature want to just eat flesh pots. They don't want to eat and live. But we eat to live, so to speak, not live to eat. Notice in Numbers 11, our main text, one of the two main texts I'm going to go to now. And it says if we can take some lesson about what we learn from the manna and what we can learn for ourselves. And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled. And the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost part of the camp. So first things there, what we learn from this. The people that was furthest away from Moses and from the tabernacle and from the Levites, they got burnt up first. All right? And we have to, well, I'll say it for you here, because I have the forethought to be able to think about this. And when you think about society and life, when you learn, the more you learn of the Bible and the true teaching of the Bible, not gibberish, but the true teaching of the Bible, it gives you counsel as to how to live, where to live, what to eat. I've visited places and I said, this place is great to visit when it's nice and calm. I would not want to be living here where there's a flood or a hurricane or a storm. Does that make sense? But why would I think like that? Because I'm supposed to be thinking second coming. And what we know about second coming, more indebtedness, more disease, more broken relationship, more depression, more divorces, more all of that. So any decision you're making it with this idea that these are the possibilities. Is that true? So I have to be thinking on finance, because I know in the last days there's going to be some issues when it comes on to finance. I have to be thinking on relationships, so I can't get myself into relationships like what Samson get himself into. I have to be thinking in a sense of health, because I believe that since in the last days there's going to be more outbreak of disease. This week alone, last few weeks, there's been so many outbreaks of diseases, all attributed to something to do with either human beings or people. And that's not included disease when it comes on to like sexual transmitted diseases. And one of the most troubling stories I read this week is a story of a pastor. It was a black pastor, I think, from Florida or somewhere. and he's accused of grooming a young 14-year-old and have sex with the 14-year-old and gave the 14-year-old AIDS. So two strikes there. He sodomized, it seems, a 14-year-old and then gave the 14-year-old AIDS. So even if he goes to prison, the 14-year-old have to live with the mental, physical trauma of that abuse. Does that make sense? So these are the type of things. So somebody will say, why would you be careful and why don't you, think about life like willy-nilly and free and grace. Because if you think grace, you're foolish. Right? Your pastor is lying to you. You're the idiot and he's the idiot. Or it could be a she pastors. So this is where the difference between our theology and their theology. I take what the Bible is saying and take it for real. And so notice here, the people cried out for flesh pots. And then God started to wipe out in the utter parts. He started in the uttermost part of the camp. Because they're going to be people that's going to be out with the mixed multitudes. Right? And so we don't want to be out there with them because we're going to get the results. When we're here, we're looking at, okay, is there financial trouble coming? Is there disasters coming? Most people will be like, oh no, we need to fun, party. I don't want to be around people like that. They live in a foolish life. So notice the uttermost part of the camp get beaten out first. Notice here now, and the people cried unto Moses, and when Moses prayed unto the Lord, the fire was quenched, right? So who stopped burning up the people? This is the part of the Bible when I was younger. People say, the God in the Old Testament and the God in the New Testament. Well, who was the God in the New Testament, in the Old Testament? It's the same Jesus Christ on the cross. It's the same every time Christ came down to start beat, like when the story of the Sodomites. Who was Christ referred to in the Old Testament? He was referred to as the angel of the Lord. Right? So when he left back the other two angels, what happened to Sodom? Right? When the cry went up to God, if we say Christ is God, which I believe, and it said the cry went up to God about the wickedness of Sodom. Who do you think the cry went up to? It's Jesus. And he came in and said, let's see what happened. And he said, oh, that's what they're doing. It's the same thing, but people can't believe that a merciful God can be just. That's basically what the fight is. They can't believe that a merciful God can be just. He can have mercy and justice. But actually, mercy demands justice. Right? If you feel bad about all the people that have been hurt by the juggernaut and the wicked people in the society, then you also cry for justice. Ain't that so? And that's how we understand a merciful God can be just. So they lust not to the flesh pot. And verse 3, and he called the name of the place Tabaret, because the fire of the Lord burnt amongst them. Which are these God's people? People always say, oh, the church is spiritual Israel. So have you ever read the Old Testament? What happened to spiritual Israel? Did the fire of the Lord burn multiple times amongst them? Did they get to a point where they were worse than the Sodomites? It's always spiritual Israel. So you have never read the Bible? What is the story of spiritual Israel? When I predict in the end, every uncouth thing will be on display. All right? Because remember, there came a point where Israel seemed to be worse than the pagans. How about when you read the story of Corinth? Are they Christians? What happened to Corinth? He says there were things going on in Corinth that was not named amongst pagans. So they were behaving worse than pagans. But people, oh, it's spiritual. What does that mean, spiritual? Spiritual means character. So notice here, verse 4, and the mixed multitude, who again? The mixed multitude that was amongst them fell a-lusting. Who fell a-lusting? The mixed multitude. So sometimes you have people amongst you, and you realize that says, they're like what you have to refer to as the mixed multitude. They're in the outer part, and they're the mixed multitude. And the children of Israel also wept again, and said, who will give us flesh? So I want you to see, as you see in the Bible read, it's linear telling you, people in the outer part of the camp, the mixed multitude, and then the children of Israel. It's like it's almost like a wave. The wave starts in the outer part, and then amongst the mixed multitude, and the wave continues until Moses get the message, right? Because they're going lusting after briskets, right? And they want that, and they want jerk chicken and jerk pork, and what happened? And Moses is like, oh man, you're crying. Because what happened, they don't want that plant-based food. You know, they don't want the veggies anymore. And so they started crying and said, give us meat. Notice verse 5, and we remember the fish, because there's sea areas in Egypt, which we did eat of in Egypt freely. The cucumbers, is it pickled cucumber or fresh cucumber? I don't know why melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. The garlic. All right? It's going to be a good meal, no? Fish, some flesh, whatever. But now our soul is what? Dried away. It's a dry food you give us. Right? Where the gravy? Put some gravy upon that thing, man. All right? There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes. Now, this is a restrictive diet, very restrictive diet. Was it better for their health? Yes. Was it as fun? No. It's a very restrictive diet, right? As one philosopher said to me one day, you're not going to see somebody 300 pounds, and it's because they're eating 5 heads of lettuce a day, or 10 heads of lettuce. Nobody, get to 3. There's people say, oh, I can't lose the weight. Yes, you can. Eat 10 lettuce a day and tell them, get back to me. All right? You can. So again, this is the reality. So notice here, and the manna was as coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills and beat it in mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was the taste of fresh oil. So I'm assuming it was good, but I don't know if you start to do a meal with leeks and onions and garlic, and that's just the way you say it, and all that, if it's going to be the same thing, And notice here, and if you do seaweeds here, substitute seaweed for fish, it's still not going to be the same thing. So notice, and when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it. Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly, and Moses also was displeased. And Moses said unto the Lord, wherefore hast thou afflicted thy servant? And wherefore have I not found favor in thy sight, that thou layest the burden of all this people upon me? So I'm going to pause here again because I said it earlier, and I repeat this. Did Moses want to lead the children of Israel to the promised land? How did Moses want to lead the children of Israel? Through war. Now Moses got the deliverance through the Lord. It was a better method. But still, Moses was not going to lead the children of Israel by force. In other words, he would have to constantly force the people to follow his methods. Because obviously here, the method that the Lord wanted to lead the children of Israel to the promised land was a method of creating a righteous nation. But Moses wanted to create a security system, a security apparatus, a system where it's a system by force. In other words, the people comply not because they believe, but because they're afraid of Moses. Is that problematic? Yes. It's problematic, right? Because, as I say, you can lead a donkey to water or the horse to water, but you can't force him to drink. So here Moses could have used force, because as I said to you, if you look at modern day Israel, that's the whole idea. They want to conquer the Middle East or the Promised Land through force. Moses didn't do it, and they're not going to be able to do it. So this is what we're dealing with here. So Moses at this point here was already burdened by the people and was growing weary of the people, or growing weary of the people. He couldn't handle them, and he thought God did him bad. But he was going to do it in his strength in the first place. Definitely wouldn't work. And we see today that's the other thing. You see, like, they're talking about, patriotism and all this type of stuff. And you realize that people are doing their own thing. And how do you control 300 and something million sinners? Right? You could say, oh, there's a president and stuff like that. Do the people really follow him? Like, you're telling me that the president really controls the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, the various different agencies. They're really in charge of it. Are they doing their own thing? Because people were shocked that the president came out, or not shocked but disappointed, I guess, because the president said no more foreign wars. Is he in charge of that? Could he make that decision? Well, he didn't. He didn't. Somebody say he changed. He didn't change. He had no choice over it. To me, like the corporation of a country, just think about this. The corporation of a country is that you go for the job and you take over the job. But the corporation is doing what the corporation do. You're just managing it. You don't choose what the corporation do. You just manage what the corporation do. Those are two different things. Because remember, the plan to take over the Middle East by the American system, the corporation was put in place from in the 2000s. Sorry, in the 90s. And you can look it up from various different leaders. They write it down, various different think tanks. They say, what we need to do is control the oil. So a new president comes in. I don't care if Mickey Mouse went into the presidency and won the presidency. Straight out of Disney. If he goes in, guess what happens? He's going to have to take over the Middle East. And his enemies are going to be Middle Eastern countries, especially Iran, Russia, and China. He has no choice. Because what happens, he's just managing the plan. And the plan been laid out and the plan never changed, never deviate. So how can you tell me that's the president of control where the plan has been from 1990s? If the plan was not so, how could I keep saying this is what's going to happen next, this is what's going to happen next? Because I read the plan and I say, okay, the plan going to go. It's just taking them longer. Because I think General Wesley Clark, what he said? He said he was going to do like about 5 years or 7 years or 5 countries in 7 years or 7 countries in 5 years. I can't remember. And it took 20-something years. But the plan never stopped. The same plan that Wesley Clark laid out is the same plan been going on. And it's the same plan you can find. To me, I found it in Revelation 16. It's the same plan. And the Bible says Satan is putting them up to that plan. And notice here, the people was burdensome. So it's hard to manage people. In church, like don't tell me that the leadership of the Adventist church or any church is really in charge of the church. The church is doing what they're doing. Did you read the Sabbath school lesson? All right. Did you notice in the Sabbath school lesson they said that the church believed that Ellen G. White is a prophet? How many pastors in the Adventist church believe that? So if the leadership is saying she's a prophet, and how many pastors defy, and if you really believe Ellen G. White is a prophet, they think you're fanatical and you're crazy. Is the church really believe that Ellen G. White is a prophet? If anybody online, do you have an answer for this? Do you really think that says that the church is saying officially that they believe that Ellen G. White is a prophet? She's the gift of prophecy. But rarely do you meet a pastor in an Adventist church who believes that. They have no control over the church. Does Andrews, Oakwood, La Sierra, Lowell, any major university, Adventist university in America? Southern, what's one in Washington? What's the name? Washington University? Adventist University, what is it? Or Washington. Does anybody in those, probably there's somebody, I just don't know if I know of anybody much. Do they teach that stuff? Do they believe that says, like if Angela is a prophet and the prophet says we should do natural remedies, not drugs? Does any other Adventist hospital practice natural? But they say they believe it. She's a prophet. Yeah, right. So again, but lip service is always good. Corporate spiel is good. But are you really in charge of the people? Is my question there. I don't believe it. I don't see no evidence of it. If you see the evidence, send it to me. I'd like to see it. Verse 12. Have I conceived all these people? Now, this is the same person that wanted to kill Egyptians and take the people to the promised land. Now he's saying, what happened? Have I what? Conceived these people. Have I begotten them? He didn't know it was going to be this bad. It's like marriage, right? It's like marriage. I didn't know it was going to be this bad. I'm getting a divorce. As a matter of fact, some people, they decide not to get a divorce. They get a gun and start killing people and stuff like that. And this happened a few times last week, right? Have I begotten them? Obviously he didn't. That thou shouldest say unto me, carry them in thy bosom. Because if I'm carrying someone in the bosom, they're close to me. But what I realize, even in church environment, it's hard to be close to people. Because as I said before, it's easy to love what you don't know. It's hard to love what you do know. But if you can fall in love with what you know, it's a better love. Because you know what you're loving. But most people, why they say the person drift apart. Sometimes people drift apart, they change. But sometimes what happens, they discover who the person is. and they don't like it because, you know, if you're going to go on a date with a person, for the most part, they're supposed to be have some good hygiene. Some good hygiene because it's a date, right? But you don't know if that's how they live, right? So, but when you go on a date, they're going to put on the best clothes and whatever. And then later on, you see them, you know, you see the beard rolling up. If it's a guy, they can't even shave the beard. You see like they can't groom their hair. They look like they're always working outdoor, even when they come to eat. You know, so, or if they eat in the evening. So you're like, oh, I ain't married for that. I'm married for like a GQ. I'd be like, you're not on the GQ cover of no magazine. Anytime after they say, I do. That was the last time. You know, some people live in the past. You ever see that? You ever deal with people? If you're in medical, you're going to deal with other people. And you realize they never lived since their teens or their 20s. It's a sad result to be. You don't want to be like that. You want to have a fresh experience all the time. But it's true, though. There's a lot of people that the last time they remember a happy time in their life is when they're probably in their teens or the 20s. Everything after that is death and destruction and depression and stuff like that. Let's smoke some weed. that's what it is. A lot of people, they're sad. So again, he says that I should carry them in my bosom as a nursing father beareth a suckling child. It looks so cute. Oh, that's this child, you know. And he said, no, that this is not, I can't carry these people. Look at these people. They're so rebellious. I'm going to carry them like this. I'm going to strike them with a rod. Unto the land which thou swearest unto. No, notice it says, no, unto what? Their fathers. I thought it's your fathers also. And you wanted to rescue them and bring them out and kill some Egyptians for them and stuff like that. Yeah, just think about it. Like, you really believe that the leaders of any of these countries really care for those people? Right? You think that says the people who like to do rallies with people from the trailer parks really like the trailer park people? As they hit their golf clubs at 18 tees or 18 holes. You think they really want those trailer park people around them? I want to embrace them and carry them into whatever. You see what I'm saying? But it's easy for people to talk, right? And it's a slip service. And the same people that they're doing the flag and they're doing all of this, they're people, they're not nobodies. They don't care about them. Because those people don't like people. And that's what it is. But Moses really cared for the people. I really believe. In spite of what we're reading here, he really cared for the people, but it was very burdensome. Right? Because he's hard to deal with rebellion. All right? Because when a person make up their mind, how many people in your life, and the younger you are, it's going to be harder for you. You know, you're going to see this as you're going forward. But you can see people making decisions to destroy their life. Easily, they're probably going to get 25 years in prison. And you talk to them until you're blue in the face and they're moving forward. Straight to prison. And you know, the older you get is, and that can be very wearisome. You can love people. You know, you can love people for various different reasons. I can just love some. I can see somebody love them because of the way they walk. Literally. I just look at them and say, I like the way they walk. And that's it. But everything else about them, oh gosh, hide. It's gonna be rough. You know, somebody just they have a smile or they laugh a certain way. You always remember the way they laugh because it's so unique. But it's just a rough life. And so we have to understand Moses here care for the people, but the people is difficult and people are difficult to deal with. But people talk a lot of stuff about the church. Notice they talk about the church, not about the people. Because they're into corporations, not into people. And when should I give flesh to give unto all these people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. Now, I've done the research before, and it's not useful here for the information, but imagine 300 and something million people in America, and we have one of the heaviest meat-eating country in the world, right? I don't know about the Middle East and stuff like that because they probably have not much plants. But one of the heaviest meat-eating cultures in the world. And just think about how much carcasses, I can't remember how much it is that I calculate from chicken, fish, you know, the big things that people eat every year. It's cows worth of food. And there's some people, they're eating for 2-3 people. So imagine if you have to give easily 600,000, I think it's 600,000 footmen, not the old and the young, but just the grown people. That's a lot of people to feed. And he said, how am I going to give flesh to them? What they asked me for, even geographically, is almost impossible. If you're in the wilderness, is it impractical to feed them anything but manna? Like, notice, a lot of the stories of the Bible, even even though if you can get past the infidel question about the miracle of the story, if you look at it, a lot of the stories in the Bible, there's a practical part of it. Because if you're in the middle of that Sahara desert, you're going to have two problems. One, you're going to have food problem, and you're going to have the second is water. I'm going to say, let's flip it. You're going to have water first or food. 240 pounds per year each person eat? Over half a pound a day. There's somebody eating over half a pound a day for you? Because they're eating your share and my share. That's a lot of food, pounds of meat a day. Half a pound a day? Wow, that's a lot of pounds. So yeah, they're not eating a whole cow each person, but they're eating other chicken and fish and what happened to Africa, you have to cut out the bone. So you're not getting the full weight of the cow because you have to cut out, they're not eating the bone obviously, I think. So oh yeah? 12%. Okay, consuming of beef. Okay, so there's one group of people that eat a copious amount of beef. Right? So yeah, so when you look at it and you start saying, if you look at the story of Israel, you start to see that the story has practical outlay, because was there a big problem with water in the wilderness? And then the second thing you're going to have a big problem with is food. How do you feed people as they go spinning around the desert, dying off? You have to die off one generation, right? It's like, to me, something I believe in the church that what happened, the generation that currently controlling the church have to die off for the second coming to happen, because they have made up their mind that they're not going to believe in any reforms, any practical godliness. They're just bullheaded, and they're more believe in Pentecostalism. And so that generation, as they die off, I think there's a possibility for the church to move forward. And that's what the Lord was doing here, just circling them and die them off and feed them while they die off, because they were rebellious. And this we see after Exodus 20. So whence can I give flesh? Give flesh to us, the people say, that we may eat. Verse 14 says, I am not able to bear all this people alone, because it's too heavy for me. And if you deal thus with me, kill me, I pray thee, out of hand, if I have found favor in thy sight, and let me not see my wretchedness, because it's tough to see one wretchedness. And you can see that type of pressure could cause a person to fail. Verse 16, and the Lord said unto Moses, gather unto me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom thou knowest to be the elders of the people, and officers over them, and bring them unto the tabernacle of the congregation, that they may stand there with thee. And I will come down and talk with thee there, and I will take of the spirit which is upon thee, and I will put it upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with thee, that thou bear it not alone. At this point, Moses was bearing alone, and Lord divided for him. And we see, and say, thou unto the people, sanctify yourself against the morrow, and ye shall eat flesh. For ye have wept in the ears of the Lord, saying, who shall give us flesh to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you flesh, and you shall eat it. So we can see that when it comes on to, in this point here, character development is not working much with the people, especially the mixed multitude and those who are in the outer part of the camp. And because of this, they are more carnally motivated. So they will be motivated for sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's what we say in our modern time. And that's all they live for, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so at this point here, they would prefer to go back to the slave plantations down south than for them to live free people and have to actually deal with reforms. And this is the same thing that we see over and over again. And this is why people are coming out of slavery. They're normally more carnal. If you see the music they do, everything they do is normally more sensual. Does that make sense? They're more into the grindy business. That's what they want. And this is what it is, and this is always going to be. So notice they were more concerned about the flesh part, not about living as free men and women. And they're not about the experience of being free from slavery. They would have preferred to go back into slavery, which is mostly coming from the outer part of the camp and the mixed multitude, than for them they would prefer to go back into slavery than for them to live as free men as long as they could get back the flesh pot. Right? And you can deal with people, and this is part of the issue why I believe the sanctuary is primarily rejected by the corporate church. Because it's easier to not deal with sacrifice and reform when you're dealing with people, because people, even though they come to the church and they believe in the second coming and they want to accept Jesus Christ, the problem is the reform. Most of what the church is struggling with is start to preach reforms. Because when people are coming to the world, they're already coming in sensual. Sex, food, music, anything to do with lust of the eye, lust of the flesh, pride of life. And music is mostly lust of the flesh, pride of life, and sex and stuff like that. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And they're coming out of that experience. I know you bring them to the experience now that you're telling them that they need to not eat, 6 meals a day. Don't watch certain movies. You shouldn't be watching pornography. You shouldn't be watching people shooting and stabbing people and kicking people in the head. That's going to be difficult. And so I think it's easier for the church to avoid reforms and preach reforms. And don't preach any type of reform. Just preach, grace-orientated message and stuff like that, and just gobbledygook. Because it's difficult, but because people don't hear that. And it tell you how powerful this is, that people would prefer to stay under oppression than to live free, as long as they can get some flesh. You think Pharaoh knew this? Yes. That's why Pharaoh gave them the free cheese. Right? And just give them some housing. Because it's easier. They say in the world, secular world, business, pay me now or pay me later. But as long as I get some free cheese and I get some sex and, the government will pay for my child support, guess what happened? I'll stay as a slave. This is the difficult thing. So Pharaoh knew this. Notice in verse 19 it says, ye shall not eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days, but a whole month. But even a whole month, until it come out of your nostril, and it be loathsome unto you, because that ye have despised the Lord, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? Have you seen videos, and if you have time, probably look it up after you hear me, you have time, where you will notice that people who have heroin addiction, many of them are obese at the same time. They'll be hooked on drugs, some type of drugs, and then they have obesity. And I said, I see what's going on there. Because the person is having lack of self-control in all areas of their life. So they'll be like, fascinated that person could become 600 pounds. So that's a little bit over half a ton. What's a ton? 1,000 pounds? Or somewhere there. And they be like there's certain toilet bowls, certain car seats that you just crush. The chairs you're sitting on, they'll crush that chair. Just crush it, just crumble it. Take it out. Right? Because just think about it. 3 of us sitting on a chair, we're still lighter than 600 pounds. Right? So that means that person just crushed the chair, crush the car chair. Those car chairs, especially with lead, when they make them with leather, the car seats, they make them with massage, just crush the massage equipment. So you have a person like that, they have no control, so they're just spending. Talk about budget. Like, budget what? You eat until they come out your nostril. So this is actually happening today. People are eating, and we live in a world where you can have 200 and something pounds, 240 pounds, right, of just pure, just like all kind, and that's an average. And there's people who are vegetarian because they believe in the second coming. There's people who believe the cow is holy, so they're not eating meat. So that means that somebody's making up for them. So notice here, but even a whole month. And it says, because you despise the word of the Lord, which is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt? So you can see the problem there, right? Can you have a group of people who they're so used to the flesh pot that they can't live without it? And they even though they're oppressed, they'll be like, don't rock the boat, because at least we have some flesh pot, in Camden and Newark and blah, blah. We know you're rocking the boat. because we've been oppressed, but at least we have some flesh. We're doing better than the people in Egypt. You ever see the kids in, there's a picture of the kids in Egypt or Ethiopia with the flies around them and stuff like that. At least we're not that. Right? They're free, but they're dead. Notice here, and Moses said, the people among whom I am are 600,000 footmen, that thou hast said, I will give them flesh, that they may eat a whole month. So we're not counting women and kids and old people. We're talking about the men. So easily this could be anywhere like 2 million people. It's definitely more than a million. And because if it's footmen, that's 1.2 million. When you come on to the women, and then you have the old people, and then you have the kids. It's a lot of people to feed. Now imagine what it costs to feed people that live in the flesh pot of the world. And it's been clarified to me multiple times that if you want to see flesh pot of the world, go to some of these Pacific Islanders and Native Americans, and they're tripling sideways. So notice here, verse 22. Shall the flock and the herd be slain for them, to suffice them? No. Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them, to suffice them? Nope. And the Lord said unto Moses, is the Lord's hand waxed short, that thou shalt see now whether my word shall come to pass unto thee or not. In other words, he probably was thinking the Lord is saying, you feed them. And the Lord said, no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, I can give them money, I can give them whatever. The Lord can do whatever. I don't know if it's good for us. Because if the meat going to come out your nostril, is that good for you or not? But the Lord said, no, I can bless either way. That's what you want me to bless, I'll bless them, but it's not going to be good. Notice here, and Moses went out and told the people the word of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud, and spake unto Moses, and took of the Spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the Spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. But there remained 2 of the men in the camp. The name of one was Eldab, and the name of the other was Medab. And the Spirit rested upon them, and they were of them that were written, but went not out unto the tabernacle. And they prophesied in the camp. And there ran young men and told Moses and said, Eldab and Medab do prophesy in the camp. And Joshua the son of Nun, sorry, let's make sure I'm going in sequence here. So Joshua the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, my Lord Moses forbid. And Moses said unto him, enviest thou for my sake? Would God that all the people were prophets, and that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them, everybody. And Moses got him into the camp, he and the elders of Israel. Almost there now. And there went forth a wind from the Lord, and brought quail from the sea, and let them fall by the camp, as it were a day's journey on the side, and as it were a day's journey on the other side round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth. And the people stood up all day and all night and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered at least gathered 10 omers a lot. And he spreaded them all abroad for themselves round about the camp. I will pause there. So this is an important part when you talk about the pot of manna, because what the pot of manna is that the Lord is trying to lead the children of Israel to where? The promised land, where they're going to have food in abundance, where they're going to be having plenty. They're going to eat from vineyard that they didn't grow. They're going to be having water. They're going to be having everything that they have in abundance. One thing I've learned over the years, why it's so important to have the Spirit of the Lord upon you in the proper way how the Bible teaches, is that come great wealth, great responsibility, great blessing, is come great responsibility and great stewardship. If you have no discipline, more money is a curse. If you have no discipline, more blessing become a curse. You're just increasing your option. Because what money is option. Money is option. If you have $10, you go to the store to buy. Do you have a lot of option? No. But if you have $100, your option increase. If you have $1,000, your option increase. If you have 10 or 100 or $1 million, your option increase greatly. But if you have no self-control, is more money going to be your undoing? Yes. So before the promised land, it is important for us to get some self-discipline, self-control. Because the more options you have, is the more you could destroy yourself. Notice in a land of plenty, how people lose control of themselves. Right? Again, how many cars you need? The most, probably 2. But you need probably 1 car if you have to travel to go to work. But if you have a lot of money, you can decide to drive a car. If you're a billionaire, you could drive a car, 1 different car every day. If there's that much type of cars out there, I don't think there's that much type of cars. So probably 1 car, different car every day you go to work, 5 days a week for 1 month. You could have 20 cars. I know 20 cars to maintain, and next thing you know, you're filing bankruptcy a few years later, and this is why so much time you find a young person who will become a superstar in whatever area of life, they go broke within a few years. Because they didn't learn the self-control, the discipline. And what to me the Manna story is primarily to drive discipline home by practical eating. Your eating become your discipline. A lot of discipline that we learn is through how we eat. Notice the manna comes and it falls, and every day you have to go out and get your daily bread. And Sabbath you get for 2 days. And what it is riveting your mind, discipline. If you can do something good and do it over and over again, the discipline becomes important. Why do you pray every day? Why do you pray twice a day, 3 times a day? Why do you study the Bible every day, even if you just read a chapter? Why do you do it? It's the discipline. Because the long term doing something good, you get better and better for it. Because the discipline is what's helping you. Does that make sense? When you have no discipline, you've seen blockbuster story of people and you say, how did they go broke? How do you go into a store and write a check for $100,000 and you've made millions and millions of dollars in your lifestyle and the check bounce? Where did the money go? Because what happened, the first order of business is discipline. As Brother Ernest always say, order and discipline, right? It's important for you to learn what? Order and discipline. When you have no discipline, more option is your undoing. But if you have discipline, more option is your blessing. And so to me, before they get to the promised land, all of these stories, what it spelled for me, in spite, you can get caught up into the story, which I do also. But for me, what I'm trying to understand, why this experience? Why would the Lord like you go to school, and as I said, it's how to teach you certain things basic. Because by the time you get to 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, if you didn't learn what you should learn in grade 1 or 2 or 3, you're not going to really get it. You're not going to be prepared for the higher grades. Does that make sense? So it's the same thing. The basic teaching here is that, oh yeah, where are they going again? They're going to the promised land. So you think about it. We're going to somewhere where you're not going to be policed. You have to police yourself. Nobody's going to watch you with flat camera. That's what they call it. All right? You're going to have to watch yourself. You're going to have to do, how are you going to do that? You're going to learn it. It has to be learned. Grace is to give you the door or the space and the time to learn that. Grace doesn't cover that. What grace is doing is just give you time to learn as long as you have life. So here, the lessons weren't learned, and so what God's going to do is, we give you the flesh. Giving you what, somebody say, oh, we're not going to make cocaine illegal. Could you live in a country like Colombia that cocaine is not illegal? Could you live in a country that prostitution is not illegal? Marijuana is not illegal. Could you live in that country? Because there's people, if they live there, they're going to destroy themselves. Because they go pig out and all the whores. So again, you don't have to, you can monitor yourself. You can learn the discipline of life. Because if you learn it, more money is a blessing. But to many people, more money is what? It's the option, and the option mean they're going to be cursed. And they're going to curse others. Notice some of the wickedest people we have in the world are in the richest country, which is America. They kill so many people because they have too much money. So when they lose the money through bankruptcies and through economic collapse, and you start jumping out of windows in Texas and in Wall Street over there, you know, that's supposed to be their end. Because what happened, the money wasn't a blessing to them, money was a curse to people. Think about it, so many people who love money the most are Jewish people. And every single wickedness that you see around the world, it's always somebody with a name that is a Jewish name. And when you pull up the bio on Wikipedia, you'll be like, oh yeah, they come from a Jewish family. And they hurt so much people. And you see so much of them, you know, on the hand themselves, put a bullet in their brain. So God, that's how you get rid of that wicked brain. So notice here in verse 32, and the people stood up all day, that day, and all that night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails, and they gathered the least 10 omers. And it fell amongst the camp, and they spread it out, because now we're going to eat, and we're going to eat until our belly bursts. Verse 33, and while the flesh was yet between their teeth, right? It was chewed, ear was chewed, the wrath of God was kindled against the people. And the Lord what? Smote them with a great plague. When the wicked man had come in the first time, which is our president, current president, when I start seeing this saying, oh, there's something about a COVID, and I say, okay, I've never experienced a plague. Because I never lived through a plague. As a child, I heard about AIDS, but never really understood what was going on because I'm a child. And I heard about the crack epidemic, but never really, I saw the tail end of the crack epidemic. But I remember when I saw it, because I understand or believe in a certain way in the Bible, let's just say it this way, I believe in a certain way, why I call it so fast. And I didn't just call it, I said, this one's going to be a blockbuster. And people will say, why? Because when I see the wickedness that this racist was doing, this wicked man, put in power to hurt us that his foreparents and his parents have hurt. His parents literally hurt us. I say, I believe in God, and I say, I'm going to make a call. God's going to put the kibosh on this, because he was looking for a second term. And I say, no, God's going to deal with this. That's why I thought the January 6th happened, because he think it was man that did that to him. I was like, COVID it too. And one thing I've noticed, the conservative, especially I'm watching the conservative Adventists, watching something on Facebook and stuff like that, just watch what they're saying. And I noticed they keep talking about Biden, but the whole COVID management was primarily under Trump. But I remember I saw that and I said, this one's going to be a blockbuster, it's going to be a hit. I remember I went to my brother and said, listen, give me all anything, any N95 masks you're going to have. I need to get it from my members and people I know, because I said, this one it's going to be big. And somebody said, why will you make that call? Even doctors and scientists going to make that call, because I'm not just making a scientific call. I was watching that part of the dilemma that was going on. But I was making a moral call. It's a moral judgment. I'm making a moral judgment. I said, God's going to put the kibosh on this wickedness. Because we didn't hurt them, they always hurt us. They're always hunting us down like we're dogs. And we didn't enslave them, we didn't Jim Crow them, we didn't do war and drugs and all these things that they've done. They're doing to us, and they keep doing it to us while the numbers are disappearing. And when I saw that, I say, God's gonna do what he's gonna do. And putting Joe Biden was dealing with another side of the wickedness, which was to foment that war in Ukraine. He and his son was taking money to buy crack over there in Ukraine. And I said, God's gonna deal with that also. Right? There's gonna be dead bodies. That's another wickedness that they've been working on, that I've been watching for years before all this happened. I was calling that one also. I said, listen, it's going to be death and destruction. How many years now? Ukraine war, 4 years plus? Pure dead bodies. And I said, listen, and Russia and Ukraine were two of the top countries for disappearing of people. They had population decline. It's not just Italy and Japan. So I say it's going to get worse, because these people don't stop practice wickedness. So notice here, and he called the name of the place Kibroth Ateva, I think I said that right, because they buried the people that lusted. Is it still today? Or as Olympic fixed the problem? Swimming and running, that's what we're doing when we take that thing. So as it fixed the problem, because the people that lusted, are they getting cut down? And the people journeyed from Kibroth Ateva. I think it's more than one way to say that. Unto Ezeroth, and abode in Ezeroth. So that's the story of there. Leadership matters. And Moses, I believe, did the right leadership. It would be good to be leadered by Moses, who cared for the people. What I realize is that people want to be seen and to be heard, but not to care for the people. But the people are important. A lot of time people, they support leaders and they think the leaders. I find it fascinating that why would Westerners, people of Western origin, Western European origin, think that because a person's skin color, they're going to make the right decision for them? While the decision they're making, their numbers keep disappearing. Very strange. It's like they're not matching. They're making decision for me and I'm disappearing. I think we should choose leaders based upon quality and character, not based upon skin color. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 1, so notice here, the blessing of the Lord, what the Lord is. This is important for our day. I believe before the end of time, and we're living it because we think we're in the end of time, that all the reforms that God wanted for the children of Israel, God's people live it. Might not be in the corporate level, but God's people who are true Adventists will live out these reforms. That's what true Adventism really is. To bless you in the latter day. This story is important for those who we're going into a promised land, we believe, and we're living out the reforms. That means we keep the dietary reform, we keep the discipline, we keep the self-control, we keep the Sabbath, we have all the reforms locked down, and we live in the reforms because we believe the reforms are for a blessing. Notice in Deuteronomy 8, verse 1, we'll take some of this chapter. All the commandments which the Lord command thee this day shall you observe to do, that you may live and multiply and go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers. So notice here, the reforms, the teachings, the 10 commandments, all of this was to prepare people to live in the promised land. Because remember, the Lord was going to dispose or remove people who should not live in the promised land because of the things they were doing. Remember, there were big meat eaters in the promised land. I mean, the Canaanite tribes, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Hittites, the Jebusites, and so forth, the Amorites. They were sodomites, they were pedophiles, they were mass murderers. Because remember, when Abraham walked the face of the earth, there were 13 tribes. By the time we get to Moses listed 7 tribes, 6 had disappeared. And then sometime Moses lists 6 tribes, so probably 7 disappear. If we notice, in the last day, we have a similar thing. We went from multiple tribes in Western Europe to 7 tribes, and then sometimes it's hard to figure out even what is the 7 tribes. So because they're genociding each other and stuff like that. And then they say, we're the problem. So if you look at this, it's to bless you in the latter end. And so because he's blessing you, and I'll read that text again because I think that text is key to understand what's going on in the Old Testament. We understand, like, again, I find it fascinating when I read David, the story. I always have to remind myself, anything that happened in David's story and in Saul's story is not what God wanted. Because God never wanted a king for Israel. So their story and all the stories about the kings, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, Chronicles, 1 Chronicles, 2, all that story is just a mishmash of craziness because the children of Israel rebel. So for the Jew and for the Adventist, what else diet God want us on? He wants us on a plant-based diet. It doesn't mean that the church is not in a struggle for this or rebellion against this. Because God's will for you, how you should live, is not necessarily what you accept. You're supposed to. Because we're supposed to believe. What I'm trying to teach you here is that I believe that when I read the Bible, I believe God, the things that people have a problem with, I don't have a problem with. At least I'm trying not to, and I don't have a problem with. Because I believe that God is God's best interest. He has my best interest at heart. That's why I give me these rules. But some people believe that God is limiting them because they have not tasted and seen. So when we read this, he's saying, so when you go into the land, you're not going to be like the heathen. Did that what happened? Did they live like the heathen? If you look at the Jews now, the Jews are the top 3 countries in the world for homosexuality. It's America, Philippines, and the Jews. So they're still doing the same thing. But God did not want, because remember, if God destroyed the Amorites, the Perizzite, the Canaanites, and so forth, for bestiality, homosexuality, pedophilia, Why would you go there and do the same thing? What's the point? Does that make sense? If they're charging usury and they're doing all this thing, why would you do that? Think about it. Almost, they say how many groups that are terrorist groups that America lists as terrorist groups were started by Americans or Jews. Why would America start all this terrorist group and then have to deal with the terrorist group that they started? They started the group to terrorize people and then they become, you look it up and you will see. The biggest supporter, state sponsor of terrorism is actually the American government. So when you look at this, you're saying, but we're not supposed to do that. Why are we doing that? If we're God's people, we're not supposed to do that. So because I see it, that means that I shouldn't practice. I should see it and say, oh, so I shouldn't do this. So I'm going to read again for you, because all what we're going through here, ultimately, everything I say, I'm just trying to tell you that says, when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, when you read from Genesis to Revelation, my conclusion is the Lord is on our side. And we should do life according to the way the Lord would have us do it. It's not a fanatical thing to keep a Sabbath day holy. Try, it'll make you a better person. All the commandments which I commanded this day shall ye observe to do, that you may live and multiply. Which group of people in the planet are most concerned with disappearing and that they're not multiplying by having kids? Is it the same Western European and their offspring, including Argentina, America, New Zealand, Australia? Right? So the Lord wants you to multiply. And go in and possess the land which the Lord sware unto your fathers. Remember, the Canaanite group, all that group, went from 13 to 7 or 6 tribes. They were disappearing. And we find the same thing happening. So you can't repeat the mistakes and the behavior of a group of people and expect that so you're going to condemn what you're doing the same. You have to do different. You have to change, because the same result will happen to you. In other words, if I live like them, I'm going to get the same results as them. So when we read the Bible, what the Bible is telling us, that said, don't do this. But oftentimes we get bogged down in the crazy stories, because like, how do you go from this to the story of Samson? This is a crazy story. You're talking about a judge supposed to be anointed by the Lord, all just love hookers and whores. In today, he'd have gonorrhea, syphilis, AIDS, crab louse, everything. Just think about it now. In the Bible, the story will be worse, because they will say, no, when he died and did the autopsy, they find him with AIDS, syphilis, everything will be on him, like creepy crawlers all over him, because of all the hookers he's going with. You see what I'm saying? The story wouldn't be good. So we don't want to go down that path. We want to be able to understand that those stories are there, but they're there to understand that when men veer off God's will, this is the end result. How you come from Reformation to slavery? How you say you're God's country and you're doing all these wars? And you say, oh no, they're just picking fight with me. Yeah, but you're over here. Look, listen, how many wars America have fought in America other than the Civil War? How many wars America have fought other than the Civil War in America? All right? All right? But what happened? They go all over the world fighting people and they say, we're the problem. It's like we deal with Kens and Karens. They go everybody and bother people, and then when people get mad at them, they're surprised. Like, you're over here and they're over there. Leave them over there. And thou shalt remember all the ways of the Lord thy God that led thee these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble thee and to prove thee to know what is in thine heart, whether thou wouldest keepeth his commandment or no. So you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And he humbled thee and suffered thee to hunger, and fed thee with what? Manna, which thou knowest not, neither did thy fathers know, that he may make thee know that a man doth not live by what? Bread only, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of the Lord, that man live. So what I understand with this, which is can be difficult, we talk about new truths, old truths, and all this type of stuff. I'm not getting into that discussion, but kind of. This was something that was fresh. You think this was probably surprising to Moses? Probably. I don't know if I've ever read that Moses understood this was going to happen. This was a twist in the story that one could, like, what? Because it's one thing to say, for me to say, go on a plant-based diet. It's another thing to say, no, you're just going to have manna every day. Talk about restrictive. It's that would be. So even there's days when I'm eating, I'm thinking, my diet is nothing to do with the restriction that happened to these people. And there's time you're looking at somebody, they're so sick, and the only solution I think for them, they need to go to a retreat and start doing some fasting. Because that's what's going to fix their problem. They need to be as far away from a fridge and a supermarket as they can. Because the solution, you know, like, it will fix. I remember years back I'd read this book, Fit for Life or Fit for Something. And I think I have it right there. And I read this book, and I remember I was working with this guy, and I said to him, say, you know, there's a way I could tell you, because I think he was doing Herbalife or something. I said, there's a way I could tell you to eat and you will lose the weight. He said, how? I say, what you do is you eat only vegetables and protein, or vegetables and starch. Never have starch and protein together. I just have a conversation with him and explain what the mechanism was. Easy to digest, blah, 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 blah. And I said, really? I saw him a while after. Forget about it. It was just a conversation I was having with the person. I just said to him, said, no, this will definitely. I guess I was so sincere and I was so convincing. But I never thought about it. I forget about it. Then I met him a little while. He lost weight. And I was like, oh, you look different. And I said, what's going on? He said, you remember what you told me? He said, me and my wife did it. We've been on it. We've been on that program. I said, really? And he said, yeah, we've been on that program. I lost weight. I said, that's amazing. And it looked amazing. You know what I'm saying? It worked. But you're going to have to go on a manna diet. You're going to get restricted. But you can get the results. It's just, can you hack it? Because it's hard to do that. I'm not going to say it's easy. It's hard to go on a very restrictive diet. But you can restrict your diet, and if it's, as long as you have the nutrients, obviously the Lord gave them the food, so the nutrients was there. And you could be very healthy. It will happen. It's just, as I said, you're not going to be able to have 10 heads of lettuce, and you're going to, your calories will plummet. Your body be full, but your calories will plummet. I tell you, me and tomorrow we have got some coconuts, and I would eat, one day we eat just 3 coconuts between both of us. And for me, I felt full. No, you're not going to feel full for long. Because what's the problem? Eh? It's just a lot of water and some jelly. You're going to go hungry. But for the moment, you're full. You just have to just keep going. So you've seen people when they do raw. They have to be in a tropical area and they have to eat copious amount of. Because what happens, you're going through the food faster. Because there's not a lot of protein and carb. So, knowest which not, whether neither your father know, that he might know what that the Lord, the man should not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeded out of the mouth of the Lord. Shall man live? So notice here, the Lord said, I will do it. And so we believe again what we're seeing. Just think about it for the end times. We're living a time when I'm amazed sometimes. This week I was in Walmart. I was looking for a bicycle wheel. And I went to the Walmart. I was actually talking to Brother Green when I was in the Walmart. I'm in Walmart, and I'm amazed that Walmart has slowly been transformed into a supermarket. And at the time, I'd bought like the paste for Thai curry. But I didn't buy it there, but I went and I was walking through the aisle looking at different foods they have. And I was amazed that they have like 4 different types of ghee. So if I see 4 different types of ghee, ghee is fat from, it's like lard for cows. I don't know if there's a better way to say that. So if you know there's ghee and there's 4 different types, not just one type of ghee, but 4 types, what does that tell you? Who's living in the community? Or who's moved in the community? People who eat ghee. So, you know, this is like, that's interesting. But I'm thinking, and then I'm seeing stuff with organic, and, you know, I haven't been here in a while, so last time I was there 3 months and I was seeing that they were packing out the store and then they keep getting expanded. But things have changed, right? More plant-based, more this. While people are doing the brisket still, but there is this development where people are doing more health. And I believe that's part of what we will see in the last days, and we'll get more and more. Certain discussions about equality, race, all this type of stuff is becoming more public, especially in light of the push from the current White House to push all this racism from the South Africans and the Western Europeans. It's fascinating to watch that discussion going on, even though I know people will die because they have killed people in the past. Thy raiment wax not old upon thee, neither did thy foot swell for 40 years, so the inflammation was down. Thou shalt also consider in thine heart that as a man chasteneth his son, so the Lord thy God chasteneth thee. Therefore, thou shalt keep the commandments of the Lord. Notice, Lord always emphasizes Genesis to Revelation, keeping it. It's not philosophical and intellectual. It's something that you do and you experience it and you understand the value of it. To walk in his ways and to fear him. So when we talk about natural health and we talk about self-controlled diet, why it's so important to us is because it's hard to get it until you do it. Because it's good to go through life when you're not always sick, not always have a cold, not always have a flu, have cold sores, have sores, weeping and gnashing of teeth. When you have health, you value health and you see the value of it. But a person who is living life under the depression of drugs and all the genetic engineered foods and stuff like that, they don't really understand the value of it. But if you understand what health is, then for what I'm saying here is a giveaway. Beware that thou forget not the Lord thy God in keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes which I command thee this day. Lest when thou eatest and art full, and hast built goodly houses, and dwelt therein, and when thy herds and thy flocks multiply, and thy silver and thy gold multiply, and all thou hast is multiplied, then thine heart be lifted up, and thou forget the Lord thy God, which brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So notice here, where you become rich and switch. Right? From being a child, they used to say a person get rich and they switch. If I notice that says you've seen some of these superstars, guys I'm talking about, that they were men when they were nobodies, and then they become a superstar in sports or in music. Next thing you know, they start dressing women clothes and sequins and stuff like that, and they start looking softer and they start looking less manly. And now sometimes they even put on skirt, and I say, oh, they switch. They get on the other side. Sad. So basically what the Lord is saying, don't get rich, don't switch. All right? Stay straight. All right? Do the right thing. Stay on the straight and narrow. But I've watched these guys and I'm like, oh, he just switch. He got translated, but not to heaven. He started hanging out in Greenwich Village. Verse 15. Who led thee through that great and terrible wilderness? See, they get soft. You're in the wilderness, you're rough. They get all nice and soft, and oh man, they're switching over there in Israel. Wherein were fire serpents and scorpions and drought, where there's no water, who brought thee forth water out of the flinty rock, out of the rock of flint. You can see what is painted here. They become soft. When you start seeing the men start putting on nail polish, and I see this guy turn up with a chandelier on his ears. He's an ex-basketball player. They have a picture of him with a chandelier on his ears. And you just say, man, he switched big time. Start wearing kilt. That's what they call it. The Scottish or Irish skirts. A kilt. Yeah, and start, you start knowing that they switch big time. They need to go back to the wilderness. Who fed thee in the wilderness with manna, which thy father knew not, that he may humble thee, and that he might prove thee, to do thee good in the when? In the latter end. Right? The Lord don't want you to get consumed with material possession, to get consumed with that type of stuff, and you start becoming silly and soft. The moment they start having some rich friends and they start hanging out with some rich friends, they start acting as if they're switching up. And they can't be normal anymore. You can go outside sometime, and you can, even if you get that rich where you have servants, sometimes go cut the lawn. Just cut the lawn for cutting the lawn's sake. Get your nails a little bit dirty. Go do some yard work. Just get used to nature. And thou say in thine heart, my power and my might has gotten me this wealth. A few more verses to close. Notice here, but verse 18, thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for in is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, and that he may establish his covenant, which he sware unto thy fathers in this day. And it shall be, if thou do at all forget the Lord thy God and walk after other gods and serve them and worship them. I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish, as the nations which the Lord destroyed before your face. So shall ye perish, because ye would not be obedient unto the voice of the Lord thy God. So just like Western Europe, it's always sad when I watch Western European says the reason why they're the most powerful people on the planet is because of evolution, and because they evolved to abuse black people and brown-skinned people. But notice here, I believe they came out of the caves in Europe and came out of the dark ages because of the Reformation. They say it's because of evolution. They evolved to oppress people and to abuse people. But remember, those people who failed before them failed for the same specific reasons. So if they've fallen likewise, we can understand why they talk about the great replacement theory, because they see their numbers decline and they see that they're being replaced. But what they don't understand is that says the money that God blessed them with, they use it to oppress people. Just think about all the money and the budget. They have $1 trillion being sent to have war against poor people around the world, and now they want $1.5 trillion. So their money and their wealth is used to abuse people. Their money and their wealth is not used to bless people. So God said to Israel, if you do this, I'm going to destroy you. So that's why when most people say, oh, Adventism is spiritual Israel. Well, people like me, I don't believe people like me and myself can't be in the corporate church because they abuse us. Because we believe in the spirit of prophecy and reforms. And they think that we're the enemy of God and we're trying to work our way to heaven and stuff like that. I'm just trying to maintain my health and my mental well-being and my spiritual life. But for them, they think that's an offense to them. These people are abusive of people. So I believe that says when we are blessed, our money and our blessing is used to what? Bless those who are less fortunate. To be fair to people, to treat. None of my money that I would use, the government do what they do with my tax dollars, will be used to be killing people all over the world and assassinating people. Because we're not Satan people. You know what I mean? They have rejected God. These, the worst is all these evangelicals. They just go around the world and just killing people for fun. And so we're not in that rebellion. We believe that rebellion is an abomination and that God is cursing them, and that's why the numbers are dwindling. And the numbers are going to continue dwindling because they're rebelling against God. They're using their money and their power and their nuclear bombs and their nuclear submarines to abuse poor people. We're not for that. We're for Jesus, and we believe that God came to bless those who are less fortunate, which we are one of those. Notice in Luke chapter 4, verse 18 and 19, it says, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. We don't abuse the poor. We are for those who are less fortunate. He had sent me to heal the brokenhearted. Who breaking people's heart? All right? Who are the people that are hurting people and keep talking bad about people and talking down people as if they're less than simply because they're born white? We're not for that. And who talking and hurting people? Rich people. As Paul says, your worst enemies are the people who run the Magnificent Seven. To preach the deliverance to the captive. And that's what God wants us to do, to set the captive free. Not just the captive in Venezuela, but the captive in Iran, the captive in the Palestinian enclaves. And I feel sad for the Ukrainian because they've been just murdered to fight a proxy war for Western Europe and America. The recovering of sight to the blind, because people are blind. They call them Laodiceans. And to set at liberty them that are bruised. We want to bless those that are bruised. We're not for rich people. We're for people. That's it. We're not for the poor, the rich. We're just for people because we are fair. To preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Isaiah chapter 61 verse 2 says, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. The day of vengeance for my God. And we've seen that. They call it El Nino. Whatever you want to call it, the disasters are going to keep increasing. That's what we understand prophetically. There's going to be more disease outbreak because the Lord is going to kill the people in the outer court, the outer part, the mixed multitude, because they're wicked. They're voting for all this evil. I heard some of the old ones that were out here on the highway talking about Trump. It's always these old geezers. As I said, the Lord's just taking them out because we need a new generation. Because these rebels, they made up their mind, they dug at something that hate is their whole lifestyle. And they have vengeance for a God, and to comfort those who are mourning, their people who are mourning, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beautiful ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called the trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. So we believe that those who are rejected, whether it be by the corporate church or by the mainline system, was rejecting us because we're not them. You know, we might be immigrants, but we're not Europeans, or whatever the wickedness that Satan put them up to. We just believe that we are for those people. We're not for the people who are hurting other people, and we're not for people who oppress people. May God bless you. As Sister Tamara sing our closing hymn. It was good being with us here. So that's our last presentation on the sanctuary. Now we're going to move into some more practical godliness. Things like ask and it shall be given unto you. Life is a battle and a march. And so some of those topics we're going to be looking at for the next few weeks. May God bless you, and may his face continue to shine upon thee and give thee rest and peace. Thanks for being with us here.
Please take your hymnals in hand and turn to hymn number 191. Hymn 191. Hymn 191. Love divine, all love's excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down. Fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation, enter every trembling heart. Breathe, oh breathe thy loving spirit into every troubled breast. Let us all in thee inherit, let us find the promised rest. Take away our bent to sinning, Alpha and Omega be, and of faith as its beginning, set our heart at liberty. Come, Almighty, to deliver, let us all thy grace receive. Suddenly return and never more thy temples leave. Thee we would be always blessing, serve thee as thy host above, pray and praise thee without ceasing, glory in thy perfect love. Finish then thy new creation, pure and spotless let us be. Let us see thy great salvation, perfectly restored in thee. Change from glory into glory, till in heaven we take our place, till we cast our crowns before thee, lost in wonder, love, and praise.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for being with us and keeping us in our right minds. I thank you, O Lord, for your blessing that you have granted unto us this Sabbath. We ask that you may continue to bless us. May help us, O Lord, that as we see the blessing that's outlined in the sanctuary service and the instruments that's there, the blessing that it brings to our lives, I pray, O Lord, that we may purpose in our life, that we may be honest, that we may be fair, and that we may do the just and right thing. I pray that you may continue to be with Brother Nestor's family. May you continue to watch over them and protect them. I pray also that as we journey this evening, that you may grant us safe travel and mercies home. And I pray that we may have a blessed week this week and a productive week. May your blessing continue to be with your people around the world for Christ's sake. Amen. Please join us again next week. We're going to lesson number 7, a portrait of love. And I pray that you may have a wonderful week and join us again.